we have figured out how to single-handedly change the world.
Yes, we have. And we're definitely getting our finger right on that button.
I can't believe we figured this out.
I know. I'm kind of excited.
What is it?
I don't quite know yet, but I think that this podcast is going to help us all know.
Welcome to the Be Well Now podcast. I'm Nick, the Curious Patient, joined by Mr. Ron Dumar, Dr. Dumar here with Community Health and Wellness in Heber City, Utah.
Hello, everyone.
And we have a special guest today.
Yes, Christy Mackle. How are you, Christy Mackle?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do in our office?
Before we tell everybody how we're going to save the world.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I am. I'm curious
we
how
already
you guys
did that
are going to
intro.
save the world.
Yeah, and they're curious also as to why we have you here, obviously. We had to bring a female in because you can't save the world without the feminine.
Well, that's good.
Well, I'm delighted. I'm honored. Okay, well, I'm a neurosomatic healer. So I connect your brain with your body, and I do that through heart math. That's what I do here.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Before we get into heart math, I want to circle back around to this podcast, and it's meditation, it's mindfulness. This is the Be Well Now podcast, where I believe that living in the present moment, no matter where you are, what you're doing, can be extremely beneficial. And teaching that to kids, I think, can really change the world.
Absolutely. Imagine having an impact from the very beginning. I think about some of the skills that I've been able to develop along the way. And a lot of people have said to me, wow, you're so lucky to be learning this so young. And I felt like I was quite old, actually, as I was learning that. When I started coming into these type of techniques and practices, I was in my early 20s. So, and it made a significant difference in my life. I remember there were some experiences. I actually served an LDS mission, and there was a significant amount of stress around the whole thing and pressures, expectations of living and things that you had to do and be when you got home. And I remember at times my fists, I'd be driving in the car or I'd be moving, somewhere, studying, and my fists would be tightly clenched. And I'd look down at them like, what are you so clenched for? And I'd have to literally gently open them and just try to say, relax, it's okay, relax. And I remember being in that space. Well, shortly after that, I was introduced to acupuncture, and I started having more of this awareness, understanding, a body awareness, an understanding that I could actually be relaxed on a deeper level or more focused or more aware of what my body was doing as a whole. And that by doing that, I actually felt my clenching reducing, right? I didn't clench in my fists near as frequently or often. So that was really when I started to come more into the practice of meditation. For me, it was through acupuncture.
And for me, I've been meditating quite a lot the last 6 months. You have a relationship to your body that you develop through stillness, and you get more familiar with being places you don't want to be when you sit on that chair or get on that cushion or the floor, and you don't want to be there that day, but you persist. And there's a lot that comes from it. I'm not an expert in it. Christy, I know you work with kids. So if the body of medical work is relatively established on, meditation can be helpful for your brain, whatever. What can I do for kids? How do we get them there? All this sounds quite esoteric. We just want them to start. How do we even do that?
Sure. Well, one of the avenues that I take is definitely the heart math. And the heart math is a monitor, and we regulate your heart rate variable. So we're actually dropping you back down into your body instead of in your head, because culture teaches us to think first. And we're actually more, our hearts speak to our minds about 3 times more than our minds speak to our hearts. So once the kids start regulating that, and they love when I set them up to the monitor, they love looking at the progress.
So they can actually see like a wave or something, an indicator. Yeah,
they see when they're on the mark, and they see when they're not, and it monitors their breathing. It's not a breathing practice, but that definitely settles them down. And then their bodies memorize, right, what it looks like to be in coherence. When their minds and their hearts are in coherence is what we're measuring.
How important it is for them to see that feedback and then for their bodies to memorize it. How do their bodies do that? Is it intentional, or how does that process work?
It's kind of a muscle memory, because once they watch it and they see and we check in, then they're like, oh, okay, this is what that feels like. And the more they practice, the more they become aware of how their bodies are doing rather than just thinking through something, So
having done heart math now for about a month, none of it made sense until we did it. You had me monitored. I don't think I was doing all that well when we had our session. I don't know what well is when we define it. But at home, I think one of the techniques is imagine you're breathing in and out through your heart. And I don't know where to envision my heart, but just the intention of doing it, that's been very helpful, sort of a deeper, more intentional breathing in and out, and then focusing on something you appreciate or compassion or love. I mean, I broke down crying the first few times I did it. Haven't done that since, but it's still a very nice thing to do. But I'm so new to it. But I understand it from having done it. Before that, I didn't even know what you were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, heart math has been around since 1995. I've been watching it that long. I just finally decided to get certified in it. And it's basically biofeedback. We've got biofeedback for the mind and we have biofeedback for the heart. And it's, like I said, it's not actually measuring your heartbeats per minute. It's measuring your heart rate variable. So we want to make sure that your heart's flexible. And what it's doing is regulating or having a look at how your body responds to emotional thoughts. So, and what we do is increase your baseline. And when we increase your baseline by the practice, then you have more time in between stimuli and your response. So we call that the pause or the gap. And the more the kids have the gap, or the more anybody has the gap, the more you're regulated and you're not making all of your decisions from flight, fright, or freeze from the limbic.
So I think you would say, perhaps you would say that there are natural moments when people are permitting themselves to be in a meditative state. And so I'm thinking, for some people, they draw or they do art. For other people, they'll do an activity of some sort, and that actually becomes a form of meditation. Some people fish, right?
People run.
Some people run. And this is movement meditation or artistic release meditation. And the more they practice this, the more that they could perhaps be in a state that allows them to carry that forward. I guess what I think where we have difficulty as individuals is we know that there are activities we really enjoy and we resonate with, and there are peace, you could say, or little piece of home, right? But then carrying it forward, because what I hear you saying is this idea of practicing so that when I'm in a space where I am challenged, I can hold the space of being where you had me in heart math more aptly.
Yeah, or get back to it easier. And it's designed that your eyes are open, we're having conversations. So it's not like a meditative state where you go to your pillow and you drop way down in. So it's a biofeedback meditative state. It's where your body memorizes that cohesiveness. Meditation on a pillow is wonderful. It's great. It lowers everything. But it's not exactly handy on the fly.
Well, and they're alert then, So they're focused and they're watching. Right. They're actually watching cues of a monitor and saying, "Whoa, can I do this in real time while I'm conscious?"
Yeah, and then when they get better at it, I'll have conversations with them and see where they go on certain emotional triggers. You can hear it drop down, boom,
On the feedback on the computer.
Yeah, there's a sound, there's a look, and there's even games that we can play that they can keep the balloon in the air.
So you found something that sounds like it works in an amazing way. Is there a more accessible way that we get to people, like the masses, right? The issues that kids are having seem pretty clear to me. I mean, mental health being a crisis and families that are stressed out, they don't know how to teach their kids this stuff. So you grow up reacting and not dealing with your stuff and not knowing why you're certain ways, and you're upset or angry and lashing out. And whatever the society issues are, I think meditation could help.
You think of a tantrum. You're mentioning a tantrum. We're talking about kids, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about a 2-year-old tantrum. So is this a state
but
of
a 2-year-old tantrum in a
coherence?
15-year-old?
Yeah, well, it happens. Yeah, or a 40-year-old, right?
Yep.
Especially if it's not dealt with, if we're not given the skills or we don't develop the skills, it's going to rear its head. It's going to rear its head, right? So if we have this energetic disruption or this non-coherence that exists within us based on certain triggers in life, it will show up again.
Well, yes, and should.
Yeah, until we say, hey, I need to do some training on this, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you always want external stressors.
Mm-hmm.
That's growth.
Yeah.
And living in society.
But there is a dysfunction to say, okay, my only piece is going to my art, or my only piece is going to fishing,
or my pillow,
or going on a run, which essentially, if you're in a relationship, that pulls you away from that relationship. And then you start realizing you're more so in peace outside of that relationship than you are inside that relationship. That's a very dysfunctional relationship.
Yes.
What you're trying to do, and I think the objective here is for us to help parents help kids find that peace inside the turmoil.
Yes, like in a classroom.
Yeah.
And I've heard they do teach mindfulness in the classroom, but I've also heard experts talk about it might be difficult to teach your kids to meditate per se, but a gift that you can give them is doing your own work and being present a lot, and they'll pick up on how you're present, and having them see you meditate, whether it's intentional or not. But how do we teach the stuff early enough? Because it might be nice for them to find it on their own because they've seen the example through you and be regulated at a parasympathetic nervous system level. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It sounds fancy.
You
But
did, that was
how do we
right.
teach the kids to do this stuff, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
So, and you ask a great question because, right, Christy, how long is a kid going to sit still?
Yeah.
You're quite limited in saying, okay, we're going to listen to our breath, and we're going to do this for 45 minutes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's a challenge for adults to listen for 10 minutes, right? I feel really good about myself if I can get a good 15 to 20 minute meditation in the morning before my kids get up, and then I have to start, helping them organize their day too.
Because you're in the real world.
Yeah, it's life.
It's life.
But I will tell you, with a great efficient 10 to 20 minutes, it changes my entire day. It's very, very good. Now, I'll also tell you, relating back, I felt this similar type of way with some of the patterns that my dad initiated for our family too. So there's a variety of different ways to implement meditation into life. One thing, very, very simply, let's start really, really basic. I would say to a child, because it helps them stay in one place and focus physically and be aware of their body, can you stand on one leg for me? Stand on one leg. So have them stand on one leg. And all of a sudden, because they're used to being bipedal, they don't even think about it, right? It's totally, they've gotten to a place athletically, we could say, where they may be a little bit dysfunctional in certain movements, but they've athletically attenuated to it well enough that they can just move all over the place. They don't even have to think about it. But if you tell them to stand on one leg, all of a sudden they have to really start focusing in their body. And then you ask them, where is that you're feeling a lack of balance? Is that in your foot? Is it, what muscles are contracting? Is it your leg muscle? Is it your hip muscle? Is it your back? Why are your arms flailing all over the place? And as long as they'll let you do it, that almost becomes a game for the child, right? It's fun, it's interactive. And then before you lose their attention, you could have them, well, why don't you hop over here and see how well you do that? You could have them hop on two legs, right? But then ask them, well, why are you doing that? And they'll give you some silly response. And the responses, as you ask them, will get more and more reflective and more introspective, right? Obviously, the younger they are, they don't, like you're asking them and you may not get like this really sophisticated response, but you're just trying to cue them in to be aware of their body. That's it. And if you can cue them into being aware of their physical musculoskeletal contractions, then it's likely they're going to be able to, when somebody says, okay, now close your eyes and, imagine light pouring down over and relaxing all of your muscles, and those muscles that you worked today, imagine them now just relaxing and settling down and getting ready for sleep. And imagine each of them just laying their head on a pillow and, and being ready and shutting off completely. And so they can actually go through that visualization at night and repeat essentially what they had done during the day, but with the very specific intention that all those muscles that you were moving and activating and being aware of, now I want you to initiate another command for those muscles, and that is to just shut off and rest. So I would call that a meditation, right? A form of meditation. It would be movement meditation, physical meditation. My kids at night, I've noticed when I'll lay by them, sometimes I'll hear like, it's like interrupted breathing. To me, this is anxiety, or it's at the very basis of it, it's a disruption of the energy flow in their body, which we eventually call anxiety as it gets worse and worse and worse. So there's a disruption of the energy flow, and their lungs, for some reason, feel disrupted in their usual and regular flow of just in and out. If you look at an infant, right after they're born, you see their belly just going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, and it's really consistent. And it doesn't stop. It doesn't pause. It just goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And that consistency can get disrupted. So when my kids will go, when I hear them and I'm aware of it, I hear that kind of hesitation. I'll say to them, hey, just try to breathe smooth all the way up. And then breathe smooth all the way out. And kids can do that. That's a meditation practice right there, right? And all we're attempting to do is initiate the smooth flow of that energy that seems to be stagnant or disrupted.
So are you drawing together meditation and mindfulness?
Yeah, well, so there's a lot of, I would consider mindfulness a type of meditation.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the big buzzword. I think they sort of are conflated.
Right.
To me, they're the same thing, but what do I know?
Yeah, it's a type of meditation.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is.
Yeah.
But we need to become
Way
mindful.
More mindful.
And it's easier for kids to practice mindfulness than it is for them to actually practice meditation for lengths of time.
Yeah.
So religious meditation in this culture that I'm a part of specifically, that our practice is in, people are very familiar with teaching their children a religious meditation. And that is to every morning and every night say words to a deity that exists, they believe, right? So they repeat, and they may say different words, but at least they take a certain amount of dedicated time to have some sort of extrinsic communication with a deity, some energetic source beyond themselves. That's a meditation.
Yeah, prayer is a meditation. Yeah.
So that's a good thing too.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like you have the foundation for something else there, in that you have them spending time mindfully reflecting, hopefully, and not just empty words.
Yeah.
Towards something greater than themselves. I wanted to share a couple things. My son is the sweetest kid. Sometimes he'll sit down with me for 30 seconds and cross his legs, and he's much more likely to do things that I ask him. And my daughter's 5, he's 6, and she's a little rascal. She doesn't ever want to sit still, and she doesn't want to do what Dad says, but she's a sweetheart down deep at all the levels. I love her so much. But at night, sometimes if she can't sleep, she'll say, can we do the meditation? And I play this 20-minute YouTube video. It's got millions of views. We can link to it below, but some British lady, and she'll say, sit back in your chair and imagine your breath going up and down. And Penny really loves it, and she's the rascal who doesn't want to do anything. So I think people would be surprised at if you find the right ways to reach kids, how open they are to this. Christy, I wanted to ask, you're dealing with kids, you're working with them, you're trying to help them. What are kids, what's the number one issue they're dealing with? Is it anxiety? And what do you think mindfulness or meditation can do to help that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a form of anxiety. They're just coming out of their skins. I guess is the best way I know to put it. They're dealing with a lot of overwhelm. They seem to be dealing, with a lot of overwhelm and a lot of, I'm not getting it right.
Where's that coming from?
I think it's social and cultural pressure is what I think is coming from. And the older they get, the more they deal with it. And I'm seeing a lot of kids come back from college that are dealing with it. It's like they set their bars to not too high, but they're result producers. And we're kind of in an influx or a flux of what's actually going on. And so the kids are picking up on that energetically. They're like, is the school open? Is the school closed? Are we wearing masks? We're not wearing masks. What's happening with my parents? There's a lot going on, and these kids are picking up on it energetically. And so, yeah, it's anxiety. A lot of it's anxiety. They can't sleep.
There's a lot of inconsistency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize it was so important for kids to have that consistency and that feeling of being safe, and that it's a big picture. They can count on the world sort of being as it is.
Right. Right. And they don't seem to think we've got this as adults.
Oh, so they're picking up that us adults have lost our way?
Yeah, it's kind of the wording. Yeah.
So the power of us finding our way, doing that work on ourselves, finding a place of stillness and being present 5% more than we used to be. I mean, I was watching Tony Robbins, this big motivational speaker, talk to one of the most successful, if not the most successful hedge fund manager of all time. It was a YouTube video. But Tony Robbins is like, just before we got on this video, we sat down for a meditation, and he and this other guy, a enormously successful finance guy in New York, talked about we would not have been able to have this amount of success, this amount of equanimity in the storm without meditation. So it can be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, why does meditation work? What is this? I mean, it's the hardest thing for people to sit down for 5 minutes and put down their phone. They can run marathons, but they can't sit and meditate. Like, why is it so difficult?
I would say it's because you have to be sovereign. You have to know yourself. You have to be comfortable with yourself. So, what you said before about you doing it first, yes, always. If you're not sovereign, then you're subject to everybody else's energy. You're subject to everybody else's rule. You're subject to everyone else's thoughts, everyone else's actions. You become a puppet. And I think that's what these kids are experiencing. And their consciousness is way smarter than ours, and they know they're not a puppet.
I can't agree more with being sovereign, the need to be sovereign, the need to be with oneself, and to be okay with that. And I think that I would say there are some cues to understand a challenge with our sovereignty as an individual. Not necessarily from external, but as an individual, if I find myself constantly requiring the opinions or validation of others, not that getting the opinion of others is bad. It's great to get people's opinions and then to weigh what's best for you. That's what a sovereign individual does. But a non-sovereign individual would get the opinions of others and then have an extremely difficult time making a decision because there were so many options that were presented to her from all the opinions that she got or he got. And so that's one indicator to us, or can be an indicator to us, that we're not sovereign, and perhaps we need to spend a little more time with self, do a little more meditation, see if I can, like you said, gain that next 5%. Because I should be able to make decisions for myself and be okay with them, and take the responsibility of the accountability of what comes.
Yeah.
That's a sovereign individual.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And when you're sovereign, then we also get your gifts.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're just repeating someone else's gifts. So, and that's really what the kids need, is more sovereignty, because they're the future. So, and otherwise they're just repeating gifts that we've given to them that really don't work anymore.
Well, an example I feel like is my mom didn't let me make decisions. And I think as a parent in the helicopter parent age, you want the best for your kids. They're going to want to watch TV and eat Pringles. You're thinking, well, they should practice their piano. I didn't really play piano, but I'm just saying, how do you reconcile promoting sovereignty with being a responsible parent?
I would say a lot of that has to do with your personal care and concern for their development. Pulling a child away from screens when they've spent an inordinate amount of time in front of screens is not a problem. Putting them in front of a screen when they need a chill out or a break is also not a problem. But our children do. This is a meditation topic right here on its own. In this day and age, spend a lot of time in front of screens. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves is that because of them or because of us? And I think more often than not, that's because of us. Because we want to be doing other things, or we are embarrassed by what might happen or what situation we might have to deal with if they're not in front of a screen. And so we're not allowing for the opportunity for the child to develop that skill set of being sovereign. Because now they're just dictated to by a screen. So we're kind of building this lack of sovereignty. But I think the kids will change really quickly. They know how to lead. They know how to be the captains of their own ship. They do need to have a lot more placed on their laps, I would think, right? A lot more responsibility, perhaps.
Yeah, well, when I work with kids, they'll get it in half the time, if not a quarter of the time an adult will.
The heart math?
Yeah. Well, just about anything I teach them.
They adapt quickly.
Yeah, they're like, their energetics are like, yep, that's it. I teach a poem to them to get them out of shame shutdown, where they touch different points on their face and their body that are body hacks, essentially. They're marmor points that trigger the body to relax automatically, no matter what the mind's doing. And those kids picked it up like that, and they do it on their own. They're like, yep, I need that.
But us adults, we have all these judgments swirling around.
Yeah, every time I teach it to an adult, it's about, they'll go about 3 months, and then they call, okay, I need you to send me the video. It's like,
this isn't working.
No, they didn't do it.
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
they were
that's
like,
why it's not working.
Yeah, exactly.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
This isn't working. I was like, well, are you following the advice?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I forgot about that.
Or partially.
Yeah.
I do it sometimes, or I do part of it.
I'm just feeling hope that you say there's ways for kids to adapt quickly, because all I think about with screens is when they're not looking, I'm like sneaking my screen. I don't want them to see me on it. That's like a shame-based behavior, trying to not have them see things that I'm doing.
Yes.
And it's because I'm addicted to my screen. So what do we expect for them? They're going to pick up what we do.
Yeah, well, you mentioned before, too, something I am going to use as to describe this idea is goal setting. I think goal setting is a type of meditation for people, too, especially when it's done. You can do it as groups. You can do it as businesses. You can do it as an individual. This is a type or a form of meditation where you're sitting down and you're saying, okay, I want to achieve something, or I want to project something out to the future. Okay, that's fine. And kids in their life generally will have some sort of pattern that they create or picture that they're creating about what they see the future like.
Took it about visualization?
Yeah, visualization.
Okay.
Yeah, they're visualizing. But essentially, to me, that's goal setting, right? When your visualization becomes optimistic to you, that's a goal, right? Oh, I want to achieve that. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's hard, set, and fast. But what it is we're putting an amount of energy, like we talked about before, energy towards achieving something, or even visualizing something. So attempting to visualize something is the first step, I would say, or at least a very, very early step to physical creation of something. Because it's really difficult to physically create something without having that visualization first.
So you're talking about being mindful.
Yes.
All the time about the goal you're setting.
Yeah. Well, about the life that you're establishing. Yes, the goal you're setting. Mm-hmm. And kids will do this. Like, they want to achieve something, and they'll be like, "Oh, I want to," but they won't think about it all the time necessarily, like writing it down and saying step by step. Adults, we've learned this patterning of, okay, here's the end goal, here's the earlier step, and then we break it down to all these little tiny little steps. Kids actually figure out a way to naturally get there almost energetically by projecting their visualization there. Okay? So what I'm saying ultimately is that it's an energetic process. Things that we can put our energy towards, we're going to create in life. And so by practicing heart math too, we're putting energy towards a very specific frequency of being. And that frequency of being is, we would call it optimistic or ideal to us. And that's a frequency of being that we'd like to be able to maintain even when we're interlacing with other frequencies. Right? We want to be able to hold our frequency.
Yeah, the coherence, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say one of the things that I think is crucial during all of this is the witness, right?
And I think that's that more.
And I think that's what the kids are missing is a witness to your mindfulness, because human needs human. We need each other. Yeah. And when somebody's witnessing or bringing your attention back to mindfulness, as I see that. Do you see that? I see what you're doing. Do you see what you're doing? And that's really lights up the kids. They're like, I'm getting it right. You know, not as in I'm getting it right, as in there's a right way to do it, but I'm harmonizing with someone. We have the same cohesive going. And I think we're missing a lot of that. Now, of course, in sports, you get that with your coach, you know if you win or lose, that sort of thing. But that's what I found out with the therapists when I work with therapists is I work with crisis therapists in Salt Lake, and they'll get people out of crisis, but we found that people will create another crisis to stay in therapy. And it's because there's witness, right? So a lot of times the therapist will punt them to me, and then I bring them back down in their bodies, and then out. Then they're like, okay, now I'm regulated. Okay, I get this. Okay, there's a muscle memory, and then they go out the door and they come back if there's another crisis or another trauma. But I think that's what's missing a lot with the humans, and I think it's with the people, and it's also with the kids. It's like, do you see me? Like, not really see me, or do you just see me as my homework? Do you see me as the person in class? It's like, there's so much about our world that's overwhelmed anyway. And that's one thing about heart math is that I get to see them. They get to witness it. Then there's a third party, the machine, which a lot of people really like those things at the moment. They like to see their progress. Mm-hmm. And then they get balanced, and then they go out and do it on their own. And once you're really good at coherence, you run the room with your coherence. Your heart regulates everyone else's if you're strong enough, if that makes sense.
So it sounds like, too, that a lot of us as parents are lacking that witness ability or that skill. How do we develop that skill as parents? And are there ways that we can know if we're developing that skill, or are there ways that we can recognize how and when to witness?
Mm. Well, I think what Nick was saying, do your own work. Mm-hmm. If you don't know yourself, if you can't sit on the pillow for 5 minutes or rely on yourself to do your own practice, right? If you're always in the game of shame and guilt, trying to hide whatever you're doing, you have work to do. you know, you don't, what you're witnessing is also their shame and guilt.
So are we setting up an expectation for our children that we're not holding ourselves accountable to also?
That sounds like a story as old as time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I
Do you
love
want to hear
something that-
about some other types of meditation?
Yeah.
I-
Because I think a lot of people, if they haven't meditated yet, and if they're still listening, you guys are amazing, and gals, everyone listening. You think about, let's focus on my breath, but then you think about, let's meditate on this subject, and then you think about, what the heck is heart math? Coherence between my heart and my mind, and what is meditation, and what are these other types besides just your breath? And
So-
then why focus on your breath? This subject is so giant and massive
It really is.
that I feel a little overwhelmed thinking about it.
I love focusing on your breath. It's something you always have with you. I think that that's a really good thing to do. You can also focus on any aspect of your physiology. You could focus on your heart. You could focus on your heart beating to see if you can feel it, to see if you're aware of it. There are a lot of different things that you can do physiologically that you can change that area of focus as a practice in meditation. But I love the breath just because taking the air in and out is our sustenance. If we stop doing that, we're done.
It's the first and the last.
Yeah, we're finished if we don't. So it's really important to make sure that we're getting full, complete breaths every day on a very regular basis and fully emptying. A lot of people don't understand the value of truly emptying the lungs. And so we build up all of this oxygen supply. We're trying to exchange it. We have this carbon dioxide that's being released. Carbon dioxide is actually a base. It's a balancer of pH in our blood. So there's this really critical and important exchange. And if we're pooling either of those, too much oxygen or too much carbon dioxide, we're going to end up with an acid-base imbalance in our blood and our pH. And if our pH varies by even a few decimal points, we're in trouble.
It cracks me up. Everyone's drinking this alkaline water, and it's a lot of the answers is in the breath.
Yeah.
It'll cool your system. We're all pretty inflamed at the moment.
So mindfulness, we've mentioned quite a bit about mindfulness, I think, today. We've also talked about spiritual meditation being a form of prayer. People can also do rituals or sacraments that
Mala beads.
Yeah, mala beads. So that's the counting. You can do mantras. I have my patients sometimes do mantras, and your application of these does not have to be like a super serious science. I want meditation to be as free and easy to get for people as possible and to grasp, right? You and I, Nick, have talked about this a little bit too. It is good for us to practice and to get deeper into states of meditation and even levels and approaches to meditation. But meditation, first of all, has to be yours. If you're practicing someone else's meditation all the time, well, it's not really, again, you're abdicating yourself as sovereign. And so throughout your meditation, you should be aiming to say what resonates most with me. And so that I hope is an aim for everybody throughout this.
First of all, I just want to comment on abdicating yourself as sovereign. Fancy words, doctor.
Sorry.
Amazing. No, I love it. I love it. And then for me, being attached to some kind of outcome, right? I'm stressed out. I'm tired. I'm going to meditate so I can feel better. The best advice I could give anybody as a beginner here, because I'm the beginner is what I mean, is just sitting and say to yourself, I'm just doing this. It's okay if I meditate badly. Like, who cares? It's the practice of sitting down, being with the discomfort, focusing on the breath, listening in that stillness for what's actually happening, developing that relationship with yourself, that sovereignty, and not trying to focus on some outcome. Because you mentioned a very efficient 10 or 15 minute meditation, and we all want to get there. We want the technology feedback. I want to become more efficient. And that's probably a good goal. But at the same time, it's okay if you have a inefficient meditation if you just spend time sitting. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Well said.
That's what it should be,
Yes.
right? And people may find themselves getting bored with that sometimes. And if you find yourself getting bored, or you find your brain going, what is that? Oh, what was that? Like squirrel moments. That's when maybe you can start using some of the techniques that we've talked about today to see if you can settle down into more of a meditation and just let the body be. One form of meditation, mindfulness actually, is almost like I describe it sitting in an audience. You're a member of the audience, and you don't know what actor is coming on next, right? Our brain often is super predictive in our life and the things that we do, and we're like, oh, we analyze this and we bring it over here and then we take it over there, and we're always trying to manipulate and control these events. But when you're an audience member, all you can see is the stage, and you just let the people come on, and you know what? You're not the director, so you don't tell them when to go off. So they just go off when they go off. So mindfulness also is part of like, oh, that's interesting. Look at what just came to my mind. And then eventually that might go.
Do you push it away or do you let it go? Because I heard someone say the pushing away is aggressive, and by simply letting it go, it's a more compassionate way to handle that, and you're building compassion for yourself that you can then translate to others.
Absolutely. You're not the director. You're the audience member. So when you're doing mindfulness, you're the audience member. The director will tell that person when they come in and when they go out, right? But you're not the director when we're practicing mindfulness. You're the audience member. And so they'll come on and then they'll go off. Entirely up to them, not to us.
Yeah, and I would say that's like a form of trust. So you could trust yourself. So if it's something that comes up and you're like, oh, I need to take care of this, and you start to have a argument with a belief, just trust yourself that it will come around and you could take care of it or whatever later, right? You're trusting yourself this whole time. You're trusting yourself to sit down and keep your word with yourself. Let things come, let things go. Trust the universe. Trust the process. It's just it's becoming sovereign.
And I'll sometimes sit down and start creating lists in my head and recognize that and know that I'm here to be with my breath, but I'll keep making the list. I'll say I'm going to do this and then that and then that, because the anxiety builds in the morning of all the things I have to do. And okay, maybe I'll have the first letter of each word, like brush my teeth, write this thing down, write this email, BWR, something like that. I'll get a place of comfort in my head after 2 minutes, and then I'll let it go. But that's coming from a place of trust, knowing that like it's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not a bad meditator. Yeah. I'm just here right now. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but maybe that is perfect. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. But that's developing that sovereignty of knowing other people define this as such. Maybe my levels on the screen would be all over the place, but I'm okay.
So jumping back into just a few of these things, we mentioned mantra, but didn't really explain it, I think. So mantra, usually people will use a series of words, or they'll use a tone. And the most common one is Om.
Also chanting?
Mm-hmm, chanting, okay. Yep. And people often will say, with my patients, I'll teach them to do 3 words, like to do a series of 3. So that might be love, peace, joy. And they'll just love, peace, joy, love, peace, joy, love, peace, joy, love, peace, joy. And they can...
You say it out loud or in your head?
You can say it out loud. You can say it in your head. Again, it's up to you, right? So I do have some... When I do it, sometimes I'll say it loud. It depends. If you're in a room and you're doing a mantra because you need to settle yourself down, probably not doing it out loud. If you're in a room with people, in a business meeting or something. But it can be very beneficial, and it can work for a lot of people. One that I have, one of my kids, I recommended to them, great, powerful, strong, right? It's like great, powerful, strong. You can accomplish lots of things. You're great, powerful, strong, great, powerful, strong. And if we can have these things repeating, again, the idea is to practice this so that it's repeating for us when we are challenged in life. So now if I'm meditating with a mantra and it's love, peace, joy, love, peace, joy, love, peace, joy, then all of my interactions in life, especially when I'm triggered, are going to elicit love, peace, joy, right?
Even if it's 2% of the time, because in
Yes,
real life, it's really hard. But if you sit down every day,
you're going to get
and say
better and
that,
better at it.
at some level, it'll resonate in some circumstance.
More than it would have before.
And isn't that what we want in life, is just some sense of improvement and progress?
Yeah.
One of the things that really helps is the mala beads with the children, because the mala beads, there are 108 of them, and they just touch each one. So you would say, love, peace, joy, touch the next one, love, peace, joy, touch the next one. So it's 2 parts. It's mouth, thought, heart, and then it also is kinetic. So use your hands to move through. So that may be one access for children, is to get them a
like
mala bead.
focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can settle a lot of it, because your hands are moving. There's an end, there's an end to the beads that sometimes helps children that are really out of their skin or out of their minds. There's an end to it. They know when it's going to end is 108, at the end of where the big stone is on the mala bead. But there's a lot of ways to access that, and I think putting those 2 together is a beautiful way, especially for kids.
I've been studying mala beads. I want to get some, and there are so many questions that I have, and we're very well into this podcast, so maybe we just save that for another one, because that's so fascinating to me. Or not. Because there's necklaces, there's bracelets, there's ways to touch it. You don't use this finger, and I'm fascinated by the idea that it can help you root in the present and not get lost in the clouds.
Well, and from a child's perspective too, with the focus, one of the things that the mala beads help you do is to stay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this focus. No, stay there.
Mm-hmm.
You're not quite done yet. We're not finished. Like, stay focused. So it really helps them in the focusing type meditation. But you can also pay attention to birds chirping. That's a focus. Okay, listen for birds. Listen for birds. Listen for birds. My father used to, when my kids would start to get disruptive and noisy and like starting to cry even, he would go, "Oh, is there a dog? Do you see the dog? You see the dog out there?" And he would swoop, and I don't know how he would do it, but he would do that, and I just watched it, but my kids would immediately stop and look around. They wanted to see the dog. But he changed their focus for a moment. And it was even better, actually, if there really was a dog. That's most helpful. But he did at times when there wasn't, and that becomes problematic too. But when there is a dog, and then they can look at the dog, and then you can say, "What's going on with that dog? What is that dog doing? Where is it going? Is it sniffing something?" And so again, it's a point of focus, right, for the child to really be able to observe their environment, to become aware of their surroundings, as opposed to just this boiling storm that's happening up inside of them. One other thing in that is moon gazing. A lot of people do moon gazing, right?
What?
That's a meditation.
That sounds amazing. Tell me more.
So, moon gazing, again, it's a point of focus, right? It's an observation of your surroundings. It's, what is the purpose of the moon? How is the moon shining? Why is it providing light at night? Is it a full moon? Is it a half moon? Is it a sliver of a moon? And what do all those things mean? Right? So it's this focused observation of what's happening in my environment and how is that impacting me as an individual. So all of those things can actually be meditations. But again, I think what we would encourage is to take whatever skill set you have that already is a meditation that you're doing. You didn't know it was a meditation, whether it be art, your escape into your sport, your run, your jog, any of those things that people are doing that is a meditation, and then come and do heart math or do acupuncture or do some other focus technique, breathing, where you can get yourself deeper. And we promise you, by doing that, you're going to find that your commitment and your I guess your release or your focus in your sport or your activity, your chosen activity, is going to get even better. Like it's going to be an even better experience, I would think.
I think that it belongs to you.
The experience. Yeah.
And then all of
exactly.
a sudden you're aware that it belongs to you.
That it's yours. Yes. Yeah.
Sovereignty.
To wrap this up, can we each share one experience where meditation made a marked difference in your moment, your day, your life?
Absolutely. You're looking at me, so I will start. I will share a spiritual meditation experience. My family had received some very difficult news at one point, and we started to get chippy with each other, and conversations can get really tense and with family members, and you can see that, hey, this isn't going in a good way. So what we did is we decided, hey, let's stop right here. Let's recorrect our course, and let's together have a focused meditation and a prayer. And we did that as a family, and it was super heartfelt and probably a little more meditative even than it was a prayer, but it was definitely a prayer too. And when we got up, the feelings of agitation, the feelings of darkness, the feelings of irritability had completely redirected course, so that we were able to speak together and to discuss things with a lot better understanding of one another, and I think create a much more harmonious result than otherwise would have happened if we had not entered into that meditation.
It's beautiful. Well, I have so many. I live a lot of my life in a meditative state, I guess, when I'm looking at it, especially the big events. But I would say two that stand out is I had both of my children pain-free and zero drugs in a meditative state. They were both almost 10-pound babies, so yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
You just had to bring up superpowers.
Right.
Yeah, that's
There's
why we
so many.
bring in the feminine energy to
There it
remind
is.
us that we are weak.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine.
We just
that.
solved the world's problems. I knew it was going to come. We said it
To a
would, right?
meditative state.
Yeah.
So today happens to be my birthday, and it's a birthday that
Happy
I...
birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Da, 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 da.
And it happens to be the same birthday as my grandmother,
Oh my
who
gosh.
passed away at 97 in the winter. And I just started practicing meditation, and I had a feeling of anxiety at work. I said I needed to go see my grandma. She was in hospice. I knew I needed to see her. I hadn't for a couple days, and it was, she may go at any moment. She'd had a big fall and got pneumonia and broken some bones, and she's 97. And I meditated for about 5 minutes in the parking lot before I went inside, and then I just went in there, and I was with her, and I can't tell you why. Maybe it was because I had taken off work, so this time would have been me working anyway, so I didn't have a lot of mental labeling about spending a lot of time there, that who has time, right? But I was just with her, and she wasn't responsive, but I was talking to her, I was playing her music, I was just being there. And the nurse came in a couple times, and she was like, "Oh, you're still here?" And I didn't really know why I was still there, and I was kind of journaling in my notebook and writing thoughts that I had about her and how I appreciated that if I didn't know her as well as my grandpa, I knew she always loved me, and it was probably one of the closer things that I've ever felt in terms of unconditional love. And I was just expressing this gratitude, but I was just there with her in silence in a way that I don't think I would have been before. I mean, the nurse was like, "Why are you still here?" And they weren't mad or anything. They were like, "Oh, you're still here, honey." And there for 3 or 4 hours, and as I was getting up and ready to leave, I noticed that her neck had started twitching. It had stopped twitching. It had been twitching all afternoon. And all of a sudden, I didn't see her breathing, and I went to talk to the nurse, and it turns out she had passed away there. So I got to be with her. I mean, she'd had family visiting every morning.
Yeah.
People were there who loved her. She's in Utah. She's from Utah. Family's in Utah. But because I'd been there, not just visiting, but I was just there. I think there was something that happened, but she had someone with her, as she passed away, and it was pretty wild, and it was amazing. It was beautiful, and I think having practiced meditation, even for a couple of months before that, helped me to do that and be there, and it was great.
To be present.
To be present.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's fantastic.
Isn't
Wow.
it?
It
And
wasn't
good
to
for
be
grandma.
like, it wasn't to be like, oh, look at me, I'm so special. It was
No.
it was a testament to the gift that I keep saying to be, but we're human beings, and all we do is
Yeah.
do. We do. We don't spend a lot of time just being.
Yeah, but that's just it, right? When you are being and when you're functioning out of your individuality and your autonomy, knowing, hey, I'm responsible for self, those decisions that you're making are no longer ego. It's not about, I'm going to go visit grandma because, well, you know, if dad sees that I visited grandma, or if my siblings know that I'm visiting grandma, at least they'll believe me to be a good person. It wasn't any of that. It was just, I need to go visit her because my soul is connected to her and it feels like where I should be. And that's where you were. Because you could have been there and actually not be there, right?
Yep.
And every family has drama. There's a family member that if they were there, there would have been a tension in that room. And I think when you do your own work, you may not be changing the world, but you create a space around you, maybe a place of peace for those who kind of enter into your orbit, where I think you can make tangible improvements just by that energetic field. And so just having created that space in that room, either she was going to pass anyway or I had something to do with it, who knows, but it was a nice feeling to have just had that equanimity with her, and we're having her internment and a service this weekend, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. They've asked me to just share some of my final thoughts because, again, we shared a birthday, and then we shared those final moments together. And, man, meditation has been pretty transformative in trying to develop a relationship with just being here, now, being well now.
Yeah. Mindfulness.
Should we end it there, guys?
Be well
Gals.
now, everyone.
Be well now. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.